Hello, welcome to AP Daily Practice Sessions. My name is Dan Bonarigo, and I am from Riverside Brookfield High School in Riverside, Illinois. We are going to be going over some questions to help you get ready for the AP test. So our first question, two computers are built by different manufacturers. One is running a web server and the other is running a web browser. Which of the following best describes the ability of the two computers to communicate with each other across the internet? So we're focusing on which best describes. All right, so choice A, the computers cannot communicate because different manufacturers use different communication protocols. So keywords here, cannot communicate. So two computers cannot communicate. All right, let's go on to choice B. The computers can communicate, but additional hardware is needed to convert data packets from one computer's protocol to the other computer's protocol. All right, so we want to focus on additional hardware, right? Do we need additional hardware? All right, moving on to choice C. The computers can communicate directly only if the messages consist of text. Other formats cannot be interpreted across computers. All right, so other formats cannot be interpreted. So that's what we want to focus on there. All right, choice D, the computers can communicate directly because internet communication uses standard protocols. So we want to focus on directly and standard protocols. So, okay, let's go ahead and figure out which one is our answer. So choice A, not the answer, right? Computers can communicate from different manufacturers. Choice B, not the answer. We do not need to purchase additional hardware so that two different manufacturers' computers can communicate. Choice C, once again, not the answer because we can communicate via text, images, video, all of that, right? So choice D is our answer. So important to remember that devices on the internet communicate using standard protocols, which do not depend on the manufacturer. Any device from any manufacturer can communicate on the internet because of the use of standard protocols. All right, let's move on to question number 2. All right, which of the following is a characteristic of the fault-tolerant nature of routing on the internet? All right, so let's take a look. Remember, we're looking for fault-tolerant nature. All right, so choice A, the ability to use a hierarchical naming system to avoid naming conflicts. So we want to think about that, avoid naming conflicts. Does that have anything to do with fault tolerance? All right, choice B, the ability to provide data transmission even when some connections have failed. All right, so now we want to think about this, even when some connections have failed. Choice C, the ability to resolve errors in the domain name system lookups. So domain name system, DNS, does that have anything to do with the fault-tolerant nature of the internet? And choice D, the ability to use multiple protocols such as Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP, Internet Protocol, IP, and Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, SMTP, to transfer data. So obviously we want to think about multiple protocols. All right, so what has to do with the fault-tolerant nature of routing on the internet? So, okay, is it choice A? No, we're not avoiding naming conflicts. Is it choice C? No, we're not resolving errors in the domain name system. Is it choice D? No, we don't have to worry about multiple protocols. The answer is B, right? Fault tolerance means that when something breaks, a connection, a computer, a device, a router, something, we can still transmit data on the internet because there are multiple paths between computers and servers. All right, let's move on to question number 3. Which of the following best describes the ability of parallel computing solutions to improve efficiency? All right, so parallel computing solutions. So parallel, right, is what we want to focus on, parallel computing solutions. So what does that mean? All right, so choice A, any problem that can be solved sequentially can be solved using a parallel solution in approximately half of the time. So keyword here, any, right? Can any problem be solved this way? All right, choice B, any solution can be broken down into smaller and smaller parallel portions, making the improvement in efficiency theoretically limitless as long as there are enough processors available. So once again, we want to focus on the word any. Choice C, the efficiency of parallel computing solutions is rarely improved over the efficiency of sequential computing solutions. All right, and so we want to focus on rarely improved. All right, and then choice D, the efficiency of a solution that can be broken down into parallel portions is still limited by a sequential portion. So we want to focus on it is still limited. All right, so let's look at choice A. So any problem that can be solved sequentially can be solved using a parallel solution. Well, is this true? No, right? We cannot always take anything from a parallel to a sequential solution, right? So parallel, remember, means that two processors are doing the same work on different pieces, and sequential means that one thing has to be done before another, right? So choice A, definitely not it, because any problem can't be solved like that. Choice B, the same thing. Any solution can be broken down into smaller and smaller pieces. Well, that is not true. All right, there are always problems that may require sequential portions. All right, moving on to choice C, rarely improved. Well, that's not true either. Okay, oftentimes parallel solutions can improve, but the key is, if you look at choice D, the efficiency of a solution that can be broken down into parallel portions is still limited by a sequential portion. So there are plenty of problems where certain things have to be done in a certain order, and so that would mean that we are still limited by the sequential portions. All right, let's move on to question number 4. Both online newspapers and social media sites are used to distribute information on the internet. Which of the following best describes an advantage that online newspapers have over social media sites? All right, so let's take a look at choice A, the ability to distribute information instantaneously. Okay, so are online newspapers and social media sites able to transmit instantaneously? All right, so let's move on to choice B, the ability to provide credibility to the information distributed. All right, so let's focus on the word credibility. Choice C, the ability to provide information that is widely accessible. All right, so we're thinking about what does widely accessible mean? All right, and then choice D, the ability to provide media-rich content for low cost. So we want to think about that. All right, so online newspapers and social media sites, they're putting things out via the internet. So they can distribute instantaneously, right? So this does not describe an advantage that online newspapers have because they can both do it, right? So that is not the answer. All right, choice B, the ability to provide credibility. All right, so online newspapers, you have trained journalists, right, that are vetting the information. They are getting multiple sources, right? So it sounds like they have credibility, whereas social media, anybody can put information out there. So we don't know who's writing it, what training they have, what research they've done, right? So that answer sounds like an advantage, but let's keep going. Choice C, the ability to provide information that is widely accessible. Widely accessible, well, anybody that has access to the internet can access online newspapers or social media sites. So that doesn't really describe an advantage. So that's not the answer. And then D, the ability to provide media-rich content for low cost. Obviously, they're just putting stuff out on the internet. They don't have to print things out on paper. They don't have to deliver, things like that. And so that is not an advantage. So the choice is B, right? All right, so the ability to provide credibility to the information distributed. Okay, let's move on to number 5. A city government is attempting to reduce the digital divide between groups with differing access to computing and the internet. Which of the following activities is least likely to be effective in this purpose? So we're focusing on digital divide, right? And which is least likely to be effective in this purpose? All right, holding basic computer classes at community centers. Okay, so computer classes, providing free wireless internet connections at locations in low-income neighborhoods. Okay, putting all government forms on the city website, and requiring that every city school has computers that meet a minimum hardware and software standard. So, okay, which of the following is least likely to be effective, right? So A is not least likely because everyone can go and take computer classes. B is not least likely because they're providing free internet connections. Okay, D is not least likely because now they're putting them in every city school. C would be least likely because people would already have to have internet access computers to access the city website. All right, let's move on to question 6. A software company is designing a mobile game system that should be able to recognize the faces of people who are playing the game and automatically load their profiles. Which of the following actions is most likely to reduce the possibility of bias in the system? All right, so choice A, testing the system with members of the software company's staff. Choice B, testing the system with people of different ages, genders, and ethnicities. Choice C, testing the system to make sure the rules of the game are clearly explained. And then choice D, testing the system to make sure that players cannot create multiple profiles, right? So choice A, the software company, right? That's going to be biased, right? Because they're the people who created the game and they may all have similar characteristics. Choice C, right? Just explaining the rules, that's not going to enter bias into the system. And choice D, right? It doesn't really matter if people can create multiple profiles because that's not going to affect anything about the creation of the game. So choice B, this is most likely to reduce the bias by using different ages, genders, and ethnicities. All right, number 7, which of the following applications is most likely to benefit from the use of crowdsourcing? Okay. So choice A, an application that allows users to convert measurement units, inches to centimeters, ounces to liters. Okay, so allowing convert. An application that allows users to purchase tickets for a local museum. An application that allows users to compress the pictures on their devices to optimize storage time. Lastly, an application that allows users to view descriptions and photographs of local landmarks. All right, so the key here is that what crowdsourcing is allowing is for people to input information into the system that they have locally available. So choice A, not the answer. Choice B, not the answer. Choice C, once again, not the answer. That's allowing them to do things, right? But choice D is where they would be inserting their own descriptions and photographs of local landmarks. All right, moving on to number 8. An author is considering publishing an ebook using a Creative Commons license. In which of the following situations would it be better for the author to use a Creative Commons license instead of a traditional copyright? Okay, so number 1, the author wants to make the ebook available as a free download. Number 2, the author wants to prevent people from sharing copies of the ebook on peer-to-peer networks. And number 3, the author wants to allow people permission to use and modify the ebook. All right, so our choices are 1 only, 2 only, 1 and 3, or 2 and 3. So first of all, number 2, okay? Creative Commons is not going to be used by someone who wants to prevent people from sharing. So that is out, right? So that means B is out. Letter D is also out because we don't want to prevent people. So choice 1, the author wants it to be available as a free download. And number 3, the author wants to allow people permission. So the answer is C. All right, couple questions left. Number 9, which of the following is least likely to indicate a phishing attack? All right, so A, an email from your bank asks you to call the number on your card to verify a transaction. B, an email from a merchant asks you to click on a link to reset your password. C, an email from a utility company asks you to enter your date of birth and social security number for verification purposes. And then D, an email indicates that you have won a large sum of money and asks you to enter your bank account number so that the money can be transferred to you. So the key here is anything that they're asking you to do directly from the email is bad. So B, click on this link, nope. C, enter your date of birth and social security number, definitely not. And D, enter your bank account number, nope. So A would be legitimate because they're asking you to call the number on your card. They're not giving you the number to do. All right, last question, number 10. Which of the following is considered an unethical use of computer resources? A, downloading freeware or shareware onto your home computer. B, purchasing a game from an app store and downloading it directly to a mobile device. C, purchasing a single user copy of photo editing software and installing it on all the computers in a lab. And D, searching online for an electronic version of a school textbook. All right, so not A, right? It's free to share. B, purchasing a game? No, that's totally ethical. All right, and D, searching online for a school textbook, right? So C is the answer. If it's a single-use copy, you cannot install it on all the computers in the lab. So that is the end of our 10 questions. So thanks for joining and good luck.